you guys. I hope you guys are doing great. Are you ready for this? Here we go. I hope you are doing well. We have this last section to cover before we take the test. So if you're ready, here we go. All right, so we're looking at the state executive branch. That's the equivalent of like the president in the national government. So a governor and group of executives, I'm going to make this a little bigger so my eyes can see it. All right, so a governor and a group of executive officers lead the executive branch of a state government. These officials help run the many agencies that enforce the laws and carry out the state's programs. Early state constitutions greatly limited the power of the governor. Over the years, however, many state constitutions have been changed in order to give the governor more power to take on the growing responsibilities of state government. The roles of the governor. If the state and federal executive branches are similar, would it be correct to describe the governor as the president of the state? Presidents and governors do play similar roles. However, there are differences between the two offices as well. In this picture is the former governor of New Jersey. His name was Chris Christie. All right. So now we're in the chief executive, which is the governor of a state. And the chief executive of the federal government is the president. So here we go. The governor's role of chief executive is similar to that of the president. He or she oversees the executive branch and makes sure laws are enforced. The governor is commander-in-chief of the state militia or National Guard and can call on it in the event of a riot or disaster. As chief executive, the governor has the power to appoint hundreds of officials to carry out the state's day-to-day work. However, as you will see, limits on the governor's powers of appointment can greatly affect their ability to achieve their goals. Perhaps the greatest source of executive power is the governor's budget-making role. So that's what gives him the most power, is that he gets to make the budget. Meaning he gets to write out how the state's money is going to be spent, okay? So of course, the legislature must approve the governor's budget, and no state money may be spent without the legislature's approval. However, because the governor usually writes the budget, he or she still has a good deal of control over how much money various agencies receive. Legislative leader. Now remember, the president is the legislative leader of the federal government. So, like the president, the governor has legislative powers. The governor may propose legislation in the form of a bill, a budget, or a speech to the state legislature. The governor can also influence lawmaking by talking with legislators or by asking for public support. In these ways, the governor makes clear what programs he or she wants lawmakers to set up and fund. So on this page, this is actually a 2-page diagram. It's hard to see, but it shows different roles that the governor has. Another legislative power of the governor is the veto. So you remember, a veto is when like an executive, like the president, when a bill is passed by both houses, they can say, no, we're not going to let it become a law. All right, so in 43 states, governors have the item veto, which is the power to reject a particular part of a bill. So like if there's one line in the bill that the president or the governor doesn't like, they can strike that out and say no to that one line. A state legislature may override the governor's veto, meaning they can vote to have it stay in the bill when it becomes a law. However, even the threat of a veto gives the governor a good deal of power over the legislature because it usually takes more than 50% of the legislature to override it. Judicial role. Like the president, a governor has certain judicial powers. For example, some state governors appoint certain state judges. The governor can also reduce or overturn the sentences of people convicted of a crime. So here's more of the various roles of the governor. All right. So like the federal government, like the president has a cabinet, the governor has state executive agencies. So as in the federal government, much of the work of the running state government is done by executive agencies. Each agency helps by carrying out the day-to-day work of the executive branch. Departments of health, revenue, and natural resources are examples of executive agencies. To better understand what executive agencies do, take a look at one of the largest in every state, the agency in charge of education. This agency's major responsibility is to make sure that national and state education laws are carried out. One such law sets the number of school days in a year. Laws also set the subjects you have to study and how many classes you must pass to graduate. The state education agency works with local school districts to make sure that they meet these requirements. It also sets standards for teachers. The education agency sees that funds are spent as the law requires. Another important state agency in each state oversees transportation. This agency works to maintain state transportation systems, from highways to railroads. A state transportation agency ensures the safe mobility of people and the goods within the state. It also balances the need for transportation systems with the preservation of the state's environment and communities. As you have seen, keeping our state running takes many people, whether elected, appointed, or hired. In fact, our states employ millions of people. Other executive officials. A team of executive officials assist the governor. The lieutenant governor is the state official's second in rank to the governor. So they're like the vice president. The Secretary of State has charge of official records and documents and supervises elections. The Secretary of State is usually second or third in line of succession behind the governor and lieutenant governor. That means, like, if the governor would get hurt, or the governor and the lieutenant governor would get hurt and they couldn't serve anymore, then the Secretary of State would take over. So the Attorney General serves as the state's chief legal officer. The treasurer or comptroller is the chief financial officer of the state. Some people have compared state executive officials to the president's cabinet. However, presidents can select their own cabinet members while the voters elect many state executive officials. Therefore, the governor may have to work with executive officials who do not share the same goals and may belong to a different political party. All right, so we're going to stop here and be done.